The rain on Verdania felt different than Earth rain, heavier somehow, with droplets that sparkled purple in the alien sunlight. Lucy had grown to love during her 6 months of research on this frontier world. Each step through the crystal grass made soft chiming sounds that her equipment recorded for later study. But today something felt wrong in the forest. Lucy Hayes adjusted her field pack and checked her scanner again. The readings showed massive energy disturbances from the direction of the ancient grove, where the native dragons nested. As a xenobiologist, she knew better than to get too close to territorial disputes between apex predators, but her curiosity always won over caution. The sound hit her first, a deep rumbling roar that made the ground shake beneath her boots, followed by another even louder response. 2 adult dragons were fighting somewhere ahead, and from the intensity of the sounds, this wasn't just posturing. Lucy crouched behind a cluster of singing trees and activated her long-range camera through the viewfinder. She watched something that made her heart race. 2 massive dragons, each the size of a small building, were locked in aerial combat above a shattered nest. Their scales gleamed like polished metal as they breathed streams of superheated plasma at each other. The smaller of the 2 dragons suddenly broke away and fled toward the mountains, leaving the victor to survey the destruction below. Lucy waited until the remaining dragon disappeared before approaching the ruined nest. What she found there made her forget every rule about non-interference she had ever learned. Scattered among the broken crystal formations that had once been a protective nursery were 3 tiny forms. 2 of the hatchlings were clearly dead, their small bodies still and cold among the debris, but the third one, no bigger than a house cat one, was moving weakly, trying to crawl toward what remained of the nest structure. Its copper-colored scales caught the light like burnished metal, and when it looked up at Lucy with large amber eyes, she felt something shift in her chest. The little dragon was injured, with a deep gash along its left wing and burns across its back where falling nest material had struck it. It should have been afraid of her, but instead it made a soft chirping sound and tried to drag itself closer. Lucy's training screamed at her to observe and document, not interfere, but watching this tiny creature suffer was impossible to bear. She carefully removed her emergency medical kit and approached slowly, speaking in soft, soothing tones. The hatchling didn't flee or try to defend itself. Instead, it seemed to recognize that she meant to help and held perfectly still while she cleaned its wounds. The medical foam designed for human injuries worked well enough on the dragon's torn wing, and Lucy used her water ration to wash away the ash and debris from its scales. When she opened her food pack to eat lunch, the little dragon watched her with desperate hunger. Lucy had read that dragon hatchlings needed to eat constantly during their first few weeks of life to fuel their rapid growth. This one had probably been without food since the fight began, against every protocol she knew. Lucy offered the hatchling a piece of her protein bar. The little creature sniffed it carefully, then devoured it so quickly that Lucy worried it might choke. She gave it more, watching as its eyes brightened and its movements became less weak. Something about the way it looked at her afterward, with what could only be described as gratitude, made Lucy's decision for her. She couldn't leave it here to die. Lucy carefully picked up the hatchling, surprised by how warm it felt against her hands. Its scales were softer than they looked, with an almost silky texture. The little dragon settled into her arms as if it belonged there and made a contented purring sound that vibrated through her chest. The walk back to her research station took twice as long as usual because Lucy had to stop frequently to let her new companion rest. She used the time to observe its behavior, noting how it seemed to study everything around them with intense curiosity. Its head would tilt when she spoke, as if it was trying to understand her words, and sometimes it would chirp back in response by the time they reached the station. Lucy had already decided to name it Ember for its warm copper scales. She set up a makeshift nest in her supply room, using thermal blankets and positioned a heat lamp overhead. Ember immediately curled up in the warmth and fell asleep, but not before giving Lucy one last look that seemed to say thank you that night. Lucy sat at her computer trying to write her daily report. How could she explain what she had done? How could she tell her supervisors that she had interfered with native wildlife and was now caring for a potentially dangerous predator? Even if Ember was just a baby now, the adult dragons she had witnessed fighting were clearly formidable creatures. As she struggled with the words, a soft sound made her turn around. Ember had woken up and climbed out of his nest, despite his injuries. He had managed to make his way across the room to where Lucy sat. He looked up at her with those large amber eyes and chirped softly, as if sensing her distress without thinking. Lucy reached down and picked him up. Ember immediately snuggled against her, his purring vibration seeming to calm both of them. Lucy realized that something profound had happened during that moment of first contact. This wasn't just about saving an injured animal anymore. Some kind of bond had formed between them, deeper than anything she had experienced before. Over the next few days, that bond only grew stronger. Ember refused to be separated from Lucy for more than a few minutes at a time. He would follow her around the station, sometimes walking and sometimes riding on her shoulder. His intelligence became more apparent each day as he learned to respond to his name and seemed to understand basic commands. Lucy discovered that Ember preferred certain foods and had definite opinions about his sleeping arrangements. He would push his blankets around until they were exactly how he wanted them, and he had claimed a specific spot on Lucy's desk where he liked to nap while she worked. When she tried to move him, he would give her such an indignant look that she couldn't help but laugh. The healing process revealed just how resilient dragon physiology was. Ember's wing recovered completely within a week, and the burns on his scales faded until they were barely visible. But what amazed Lucy most was how quickly he was growing. Each day he seemed a little larger, a little stronger, and a little more coordinated. On the 10th day after finding him, Lucy made a discovery that changed everything. While reviewing her video footage of Ember's behavior, she noticed that he often seemed to react to her thoughts and emotions before she voiced them. When she felt sad while reading news from Earth, Ember would come over and nuzzle her. When she was excited about a new discovery, he would chirp and dance around her feet. It was as if he could sense what she was feeling that evening. As Lucy sat working late on her research notes with Ember curled up beside her, she felt a strange sensation in her mind, like a gentle touch or warm presence. She looked down at the sleeping hatchling and wondered if what she was experiencing was real. Could there be some kind of telepathic connection forming between them, as if responding to her thoughts? Ember opened one amber eye and looked directly at her. In that moment, Lucy felt a wave of contentment and affection that definitely wasn't coming from her own emotions. The little dragon was somehow sharing his feelings with her, letting her know that he was happy and safe and loved. Lucy Hayes had come to Verdania to study alien life, but she had found something far more precious than scientific data. She had found family, and as Ember drifted back to sleep against her side, Lucy knew that her life would never be the same again. 6 months had passed since Lucy first found Ember bleeding in the ruins of his nest, and the changes in both their lives were remarkable beyond anything she could have predicted. The small hatchling who once fit in her cupped hands had grown into a creature the size of a large dog, his copper scales now gleaming like polished armor in the Verdanian sunlight. Lucy's research station had become something entirely different from the sterile scientific outpost it once was. Ember had claimed every corner of the facility as his own, building comfortable sleeping spots in 3 different rooms and establishing a favorite perch near the main window, where he could watch the alien landscape. His intelligence continued to amaze Lucy daily, as he learned to operate simple door controls and even helped organize her equipment in ways that somehow made sense. The telepathic bond between them had grown stronger with each passing week. What began as shared emotions had evolved into something much more complex. Lucy could sense Ember's thoughts as impressions and images, while he seemed to understand not just her words but the intent behind them. When she worked late into the night cataloging specimens, Ember would bring her water bottles and nutrition bars without being asked, somehow knowing exactly what she needed. Their communication had developed its own unique rhythm. Ember would project feelings of curiosity when he wanted to explore new areas, or images of specific foods when he was hungry. Lucy found herself thinking in concepts rather than words when she wanted to share something with him, and somehow he always understood perfectly. It was a partnership unlike anything she had ever imagined possible between 2 different species. But their peaceful existence was about to face its greatest test. Lucy's scanner began picking up unusual energy signatures approaching from the edge of Verdania's solar system. At first she assumed it was a supply ship or another research vessel, but the patterns were all wrong. These ships were moving too fast and in too tight a formation to be peaceful traders. Ember sensed her growing anxiety and pressed close to her side as she monitored the approaching vessels. Through their bond, she felt his own concern mixing with hers, but also something else, a fierce protectiveness that surprised her with its intensity. The young dragon might still be growing, but he was already developing the territorial instincts of his species. 3 days later, Lucy's worst fears were confirmed when the ships entered orbit. They weren't colonists or scientists. They were raiders from the hegemony's outer territories. Brutal scavengers who attacked frontier worlds to steal resources and sell captured inhabitants as slaves. Lucy had heard horror stories about their raids, but she never imagined they would target a world as remote as Verdania. The first attack came without warning. Energy weapons from orbit struck the mining settlements on Verdania's northern continent, followed by dropships full of heavily armed soldiers. Lucy watched the feeds from the colony's emergency network and felt sick as she saw the destruction spreading across the planet. Her research station was isolated enough that the raiders might not notice it immediately, but Lucy knew it was only a matter of time. She began gathering essential supplies and data while trying to figure out how to escape. But Ember had other ideas entirely. The young dragon positioned himself between Lucy and the door, his body language making it clear he wasn't planning to run. Through their mental link, Lucy felt his determination and realized with horror that Ember intended to fight. She tried to project calming thoughts and images of them hiding together until the raiders left. But Ember's response was absolutely certain. He would protect her no matter what. 2 days after the first attack, scanner alerts told Lucy that a raider ship was approaching her station. She grabbed her emergency kit and tried to lead Ember toward the hidden cave system she had discovered during her explorations. But the young dragon refused to follow. Instead, he took up a defensive position near the station's main entrance and began making low, rumbling sounds Lucy had never heard from him before. The raider shuttle landed with a harsh, grinding noise, and 6 soldiers in powered armor emerged. They carried weapons designed to subdue rather than kill, planning to capture Lucy alive for interrogation about Verdania's resources. What they found instead was something they were completely unprepared for. Ember stepped into view as the soldiers approached the station, and Lucy felt his emotions shift into something primal and dangerous. The young dragon might not be fully grown, but he was still a formidable predator, and he had spent months learning to work with Lucy's tactical mind. The lead soldier raised his weapon, probably intending to stun what he saw as an interesting but non-threatening native creature. That mistake cost him dearly. Ember opened his mouth and released a stream of superheated plasma that melted the soldier's weapon and sent him stumbling backward with his armor smoking through their mental connection. Lucy found herself thinking tactically in ways she never had before. She could sense Ember's capabilities and limitations, while he seemed to understand her strategic planning. Together, they began to coordinate their defense in perfect synchronization. Lucy used her knowledge of the station's systems to create distractions and obstacles, sealing blast doors at key moments and rerouting power to create confusion. Meanwhile, Ember moved through the facility like a shadow, using his size and agility to strike from unexpected angles. His plasma breath proved devastating against the raiders' equipment, but he was careful never to aim directly at the soldiers themselves. The raiders quickly realized they were facing something far more dangerous than they had expected. The young dragon's attacks were too precise and well-timed to be random animal behavior, and the station's systems seemed to be actively working against them. They were being hunted by a coordinated team. Lucy felt a fierce pride in Ember's intelligence and restraint as she watched him disable the raiders' weapons without killing them. He could have burned them all to ash, but somehow he understood that Lucy wouldn't want unnecessary death. Instead, he focused on neutralizing their ability to fight, while herding them toward the station's exit. The battle lasted less than an hour. By the end, the remaining raiders were retreating to their shuttle with their equipment destroyed and several of their comrades unconscious. As their ship lifted off, Lucy felt Ember's satisfaction through their bond, but also his readiness to fight again if needed. The victory should have been cause for celebration, but Lucy knew it was only the beginning. The failed raid would bring more attention to their isolated station, and next time, the raiders would come prepared for serious resistance. She needed to contact the Colonial Defense Forces, but their communication systems had been damaged in the fighting. Ember seemed to understand their predicament without explanation. Over the following days, he began displaying behaviors that suggested his species had natural abilities. Lucy was only beginning to understand. He would stare at the stars for hours as if listening to something she couldn't hear. And sometimes he would react to threats long before her sensors detected anything. When the Defense Force ships finally arrived 3 weeks later, they found Lucy and Ember working together to repair the station's damaged systems. The young dragon showed no fear of the human soldiers, but he remained protectively close to Lucy throughout their debriefing. Commander Wright of the Defense Forces was fascinated by Lucy's account of the battle and Ember's role in their victory. She had never heard of such cooperation between humans and the native dragons, who were generally considered too dangerous and unpredictable for any kind of contact. But Lucy's troubles were just beginning. News of the human-dragon partnership spread quickly through military channels. Some officials saw Ember as a potential asset to be studied and possibly weaponized. Others viewed the relationship as dangerous interference with native species that could have unpredictable consequences. Lucy faced increasing pressure to surrender. Ember to government researchers, or at least submit to extensive testing of their bond. She refused every request, knowing instinctively that separating them would damage both their spirits. Ember had become more than her companion. He was family in the truest sense of the word, unknown to Lucy and Ember. Their defense of the research station had attracted attention from far beyond human space. The Dragon Conclave, the ancient governing body of Ember's species, had been watching the events on Verdania with growing interest. For the first time in over 1,000 years, a dragon had bonded with a human, and the implications of that bond were about to reshape both their worlds. Lucy held Ember close that night and felt his contentment through their shared connection. She had no idea that their greatest adventures were still ahead. The scared little hatchling she had rescued from a ruined nest had grown into something extraordinary, and their partnership was about to change the course of galactic history. The news traveled faster than Lucy and Ember could run. Within weeks of their successful defense against the hegemony raiders, reports of the human-dragon partnership had spread across every major trade route in the galaxy. Some called it a miracle of interspecies cooperation. Others saw it as an abomination that threatened the natural order. Lucy discovered just how far the news had spread when she tried to access her research accounts and found them all frozen. Her academic credentials had been suspended pending investigation, and worse still, there were official inquiries about her mental state and fitness for xenobiological research. The bureaucrats couldn't accept that her bond with Ember was real and beneficial. Ember sensed Lucy's distress through their mental connection and pressed closer to her as she read the messages. His own emotions were a mixture of confusion and growing anger. The young dragon couldn't understand why other humans would want to separate him from Lucy when they had proven how well they worked together. The final blow came when colonial authority ships arrived to escort Lucy back to Earth for questioning. Commander Wright met them at the landing pad, her expression grim as she delivered the news that Lucy was being recalled immediately. Ember was to be transferred to a xenobiology research facility, where his abilities could be studied properly. Lucy felt Ember's distress spike through their bond as he understood what the soldiers intended. The young dragon positioned himself between Lucy and the transport ship, his scales beginning to glow with heat as his protective instincts activated. For a terrifying moment, Lucy thought he might actually attack the colonial forces, but their connection worked both ways. And Lucy projected calming thoughts while speaking firmly to the soldiers. She explained that separating them would likely cause psychological damage to both her and Ember, and that any attempts to force the issue could be dangerous for everyone involved. Commander Wright found herself in an impossible situation. Her orders were clear, but she had seen the footage of Lucy and Ember's coordinated defense against the raiders. She knew that their partnership was something special, something that could benefit humanity if properly understood, but her superiors wanted the dragon contained and studied, not treated as an equal partner. The standoff lasted for hours, with Ember growing more agitated and Lucy desperately trying to find a peaceful solution. Finally, Wright made a decision that would change all their lives. She quietly suggested that Lucy might want to take a walk around the research station one more time before leaving, and perhaps she shouldn't be too careful about which direction she walked. Lucy understood the hint immediately. She gathered her essential supplies and personal research data, while Ember watched the soldiers nervously. When Wright's attention was deliberately focused elsewhere, Lucy and Ember slipped away into the crystal forests of Verdania. They traveled by night, using Ember's natural heat to stay warm, and his growing telepathic abilities to avoid dangerous wildlife. Lucy had studied enough of Verdania's geography to know which routes would take them to the small spaceport where independent traders sometimes stopped for supplies. Their escape almost ended before it began when hegemony patrol ships appeared in the system. The raiders had returned with better equipment and more soldiers, but this time they weren't just interested in plunder. Word had reached them about the human dragon team that had defeated their previous raid, and they wanted both Lucy and Ember captured alive. Lucy and Ember spent 3 desperate days hiding in cave systems, while hegemony forces searched the surface. Through their mental bond, Lucy could feel Ember's frustration at having to hide instead of fight, but she also sensed his understanding that they were badly outnumbered. Their salvation came from an unexpected source. A battered cargo ship landed at the hidden port where Lucy and Ember were waiting. Its captain was a gruff human mechanic named Pete, who had been running supplies to frontier worlds for 30 years. His ship's AI, which he called Bell, had achieved something very rare in artificial intelligences: true consciousness. Pete took one look at Lucy and Ember and seemed to understand their situation immediately. He had heard the stories about their partnership and recognized them as fellow outcasts from conventional society. Bell, speaking through the ship's communication system, expressed fascination with the telepathic bond and offered to help them escape. The next few months became a blur of constant movement as they traveled from world to world, always staying ahead of both government forces trying to reclaim them and hegemony raiders wanting to capture them. Pete's ship became their mobile home, and Lucy found herself adapting to life as a fugitive during their travels. They encountered other unusual partnerships that gave Lucy hope for the future. On the mining world of Kepler, they met a former hegemony soldier named Ava, who had defected after witnessing her commanders commit atrocities against civilian populations. She had been living underground, helping other deserters and refugees escape the Empire's reach. Ava was suspicious of Lucy and Ember at first, having been trained to view all non-human species as potential threats, but watching their seamless cooperation and obvious affection for each other gradually changed her perspective. She began to see that the bond between different species could be a source of strength rather than weakness. Their small group of outcasts developed its own unique dynamic over time. Pete's mechanical expertise kept their ship running despite constant repairs being needed. Bell's vast data processing capabilities helped them stay ahead of their pursuers. Ava's military training proved invaluable when they couldn't avoid confrontation, and Lucy and Ember's partnership served as the emotional heart that held everyone together. Ember continued to grow during their travels. Now reaching the size of a small spacecraft, his abilities were expanding as well. He could project his consciousness across space to scout for danger, communicate with other dragons at vast distances, and generate plasma hot enough to cut through starship hulls. But perhaps most importantly, he had learned to extend his telepathic abilities to include their entire crew through Ember's mental network. Pete could anticipate Bell's processing needs. Bell could coordinate with Ava's tactical planning, and Ava could sense Lucy's scientific insights. They became more than just a crew. They were a unified intelligence capable of thinking and acting as one when necessary. Their wanderings eventually led them to an archaeological site on the dead world of Titan 7, where Lucy's xenobiological training proved invaluable in interpreting ancient ruins. What she found there changed everything she thought she knew about dragon-human relationships. The ruins contained detailed records of an ancient civilization where dragons and humans had lived and worked together as equals. The carvings showed bonded pairs exploring the galaxy, building great cities, and defending their worlds against unknown threats, but something had gone wrong. Some catastrophic event had separated the two species and driven them apart. Lucy spent weeks translating the ancient texts, while Ember used his natural abilities to interface with surviving technology. Together, they uncovered the truth about why dragons had withdrawn from galactic civilization. A war with an extinct species called the Devourers had forced dragons into hiding, breaking the ancient bonds and leaving both species diminished. The revelation explained so much about Ember's abilities and their natural compatibility. Lucy carried genetic markers from the ancient human bloodlines that had once bonded with dragons, while Ember's species retained the instinctive drive to form these partnerships, even after centuries of isolation. But their discovery also attracted unwanted attention. The ruins had been under surveillance by agents of the Dragon Conclave, who had been waiting centuries for signs that the old bonds might be reawakened. Lucy and Ember's presence at the site triggered ancient sensors, sending a signal across space to the hidden enclaves where dragons still lived. As they prepared to leave Titan 7 with their archaeological data, Ember suddenly stiffened and stared at the stars. Through their bond, Lucy felt his mixture of excitement and apprehension. Something was coming, something that would test their partnership in ways neither of them could imagine. The ship's scanners detected massive energy signatures approaching from deep space, not the crude technology of human or hegemony vessels, but something far older and more sophisticated. Bell's calculations suggested ships the size of small moons, moving with impossible grace and speed. Pete began emergency startup procedures while Ava checked their weapon systems. But Lucy knew that running or fighting wouldn't be options this time. Through her connection with Ember, she sensed recognition and ancient protocols awakening in his mind. The Dragon Conclave was coming to judge their partnership, and the verdict would determine not just their fate, but the future of both their species. The first massive dragon ship appeared in the system, its hull gleaming like living scales in the starlight. Lucy held Ember close and prepared for the greatest challenge of their lives. The scared little hatchling who had once fit in her arms was about to face his own people for the first time, and Lucy would have to prove that their bond was not just real, but essential for both their race's survival. Their journey as outcasts and fugitives was ending, but their true destiny was only just beginning. The Dragon Conclave's ship hung in space like a living mountain, its crystalline hull pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that hurt Lucy's eyes to look at directly. Ember stood rigid beside her on Pete's cargo deck, his scales flickering with nervous energy as ancient instincts warred with his loyalty to his human family. Through their mental bond, Lucy felt waves of conflicting emotions from Ember. Recognition of his own kind mixed with fierce protectiveness toward her. The young dragon had never encountered another of his species since that first day she found him, and the presence of the elder dragons was awakening genetic memories he didn't fully understand. Bell's voice crackled through the ship's speakers with barely controlled excitement. "I'm detecting at least 12 massive vessels out there, each one registering as a unique biological signature. These aren't ships in any conventional sense. They're living creatures the size of space stations." Pete's hands moved nervously over his controls as he tried to maintain a respectful distance from the dragon fleet. "What do they want with us, Lucy? Do we run or do we surrender?" Before Lucy could answer, a new presence touched her mind through Ember's connection. It was vast and ancient, with the weight of millennia behind every thought. The mental voice that spoke was not Ember's, but something infinitely older and more powerful. The bonded pair will present themselves to the conclave for judgment. The human may accompany her dragon if she chooses, but she does so at her own risk. No human has entered the sacred nexus for over 1,000 years. Ember's response through their link was immediate and absolute. Wherever Lucy went, he would follow, and wherever he was summoned, she would go with him. The bond between them had grown too strong to be broken by fear or protocol. Lucy squeezed Ember's warm flank and felt his determination strengthen her own resolve. "Tell them we accept their summons. We'll face whatever judgment they have together." The transfer to the dragon ship was unlike anything Lucy had ever experienced. Instead of docking bays or airlocks, the massive vessel simply opened a portion of its hull like a mouth, drawing Pete's entire cargo ship inside before sealing itself again. The interior walls glowed with soft bioluminescence that responded to their presence. Elder dragons awaited them in a vast chamber that seemed to exist partially outside normal space. Each one was unique in size and coloration, from the ancient gold-scaled matriarch who dominated the center of the room to the sleek silver sage whose thoughts moved like quicksilver through the shared mental network. Lucy felt incredibly small standing among beings whose individual consciousness spanned centuries, but Ember's presence beside her provided an anchor of familiar warmth and loyalty. Through their bond, she sensed his own awe at meeting his elders, mixed with pride as he introduced her to them through the dragon's complex telepathic language. The matriarch's mental voice resonated through the chamber like distant thunder. "So this is the human who claims kinship with dragons. You carry the ancient markers in your genetic code. But genes alone do not make a bond. Many humans once bore these markers, yet few ever achieved true partnership." Lucy found her voice despite the overwhelming presence surrounding her. "I don't claim anything except what Ember and I have built together. He chose me as much as I chose him. Our bond has made us both stronger. A younger dragon, his scales the deep blue of ocean depths, projected skepticism into the mental network. Humans have always sought to dominate and control. How do we know this partnership is not simply another form of domestication? How do we know the human has not corrupted the hatchling's natural instincts? Ember's response surprised everyone, including Lucy. The young dragon stepped forward and opened his mind completely, sharing every memory of their time together. The moment Lucy first tended his wounds, their defense against the raiders, their discoveries in the ancient ruins, every joy and fear and triumph they had experienced flowed through the network for all to witness. The emotional intensity of Ember's memories brought unexpected reactions from the elder dragons. Several of them shifted restlessly as they experienced the pure affection and trust between the bonded pair. The sage's silver scales rippled with what might have been approval, while the matriarch's ancient eyes focused on Lucy with new interest. The bond is genuine, the sage acknowledged. But genuine bonds have existed before and still led to disaster. The question is whether this partnership can survive the trials that destroyed the ancient alliances. The matriarch's mental presence filled the chamber as she explained the tests they would face. 3 trials await you, each one designed to reveal the true nature of your bond. First, you must demonstrate trust in the face of mortal danger. Second, you must prove that your partnership strengthens rather than weakens both participants. Third, you must show that your bond can survive separation and reunion without losing its essential nature. Lucy felt Ember's nervousness spike through their connection, but also his unwavering determination to face whatever challenges lay ahead. She projected her own confidence back to him, reminding him of all the obstacles they had already overcome together. The first trial began immediately as the chamber around them shifted and changed. The bioluminescent walls darkened, and suddenly Lucy found herself standing on what appeared to be a narrow bridge, suspended over an endless abyss. Ember was on the opposite side, separated from her by a gap that seemed impossible to cross through their mental link. Lucy sensed that the bridge was some kind of holographic projection designed to test their trust. But the danger was real enough. If either of them fell, the consequences would be permanent. The only way across was for one of them to have absolute faith in the other's abilities. Without hesitation, Lucy began walking across the bridge, feeling it sway and creak under her weight. Halfway across, a section of the bridge collapsed behind her, cutting off any possibility of retreat. Ember's distress flooded through their bond, but Lucy projected calm determination back to him. "I trust you completely," she said aloud, knowing that Ember could sense the truth of her words through their connection. "Show them what we can do together." Ember spread his wings and launched himself into the space above the chasm. His flight was perfect, controlled by their shared understanding of aerodynamics and trust. He swept down and caught Lucy just as the remaining bridge collapsed beneath her feet, their mental connection allowing them to coordinate the rescue with precision that amazed even the watching elders. The second trial tested their individual strengths in ways that challenged everything they thought they knew about their abilities. Lucy found herself facing complex xenobiological puzzles that required not just her scientific training, but insights that could only come through her dragon bond. Meanwhile, Ember was presented with draconic challenges that demanded both his natural abilities and the strategic thinking he had learned from Lucy, working separately, but connected through their mental link. They solved problems that neither could have handled alone. Lucy's human creativity combined with Ember's draconic instincts to create solutions that transcended the limitations of either species. The watching dragons observed their performance with growing amazement as the bonded pair demonstrated capabilities that surpassed anything they had achieved individually. Third trial was the most difficult of all, requiring Lucy and Ember to be separated completely, their mental connection severed by technology the dragons had developed specifically for this purpose. For the first time since that day in the ruined nest, they could not sense each other's thoughts or emotions. The isolation was agonizing for both of them. Lucy felt as if part of herself had been torn away, while Ember's distress was visible to everyone watching. But instead of weakening them, the separation seemed to clarify just how much they meant to each other. When the connection was restored after what felt like hours, their bond returned stronger than ever. The matriarch's ancient voice carried approval as she addressed the assembled conclave. "The trials are complete. This partnership represents something we have not seen since the ancient times. a true symbiosis that strengthens both participants while respecting their individual natures. But not all the dragons were convinced. The blue-scaled skeptic projected his concerns into the network. Even if their bond is genuine, what of the risks? Humans multiply rapidly and spread across worlds like a plague. If we reveal ourselves and attempt to recreate the ancient alliances, we risk exposure to those who would exploit us. Lucy stepped forward, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had proven herself through trials. Then don't reveal yourselves to all humans. Start with individuals who prove themselves worthy. Build trust slowly and carefully. The galaxy needs what we can accomplish together. Both our species are stronger when we work as partners rather than hiding from each other. The debate that followed lasted for hours, with dragons sharing memories and opinions through their telepathic network, while Lucy and Ember waited for their judgment. Finally, the matriarch's decision resonated through the chamber with the weight of law. The bonded pair has proven their worth and demonstrated the potential for renewed alliance. They will be granted sanctuary and support, but more than that, they will become the first teachers of a new generation. If humans and dragons are to work together again, it will begin with partnerships like this one. As the dragon conclave prepared to escort them to a hidden sanctuary world, Lucy felt hope blooming in her chest for the first time since they had fled Verdania. Ember's contentment flowed through their bond, mixed with excitement about the future they would build together. Their greatest trial was over, but their most important work was just beginning. The sanctuary world of Haven was unlike anything Lucy had ever imagined. Hidden in a nebula that naturally interfered with most detection systems, it was a planet where ancient dragon technology had shaped the very landscape. Crystal spires rose from lush valleys, while floating islands drifted through the atmosphere. Connected by streams of pure energy that dragons used as highways, Ember had grown to his full adult size during their first year on Haven, now standing as tall as a two-story building with wings that could blot out the sun. But despite his impressive physical development, he remained the same caring, intelligent companion Lucy had rescued as a hatchling. Their bond had deepened with his maturity, allowing them to share not just thoughts and emotions, but actual memories and experiences. Lucy established her research facility in a crystal dome overlooking the Valley of First Flight, where young dragons traditionally learned to master their aerial abilities. Her work had evolved far beyond simple xenobiology. She was now documenting the process of human-dragon bonding and developing protocols to help other partnerships form safely. The first candidates arrived 6 months after Haven was established. Carefully selected humans who had shown the genetic markers and psychological traits that indicated compatibility with dragon bonding. Each one was paired with a young dragon who had volunteered to attempt the ancient connection. And Lucy and Ember served as guides and teachers for both species. Not every attempt was successful. The bonding process required perfect trust and emotional compatibility that couldn't be forced or faked. Some humans were too afraid of the dragon's power, while some dragons found human emotions too chaotic and unpredictable. But when the connections did form, the results were magnificent. David and his dragon partner Storm were the first successful pair to complete their training. David was a former pilot whose understanding of three-dimensional movement complemented Storm's natural flying instincts perfectly. Together they could perform aerial maneuvers that neither could achieve alone, and their mental connection allowed them to react to threats faster than any conventional defense system. Maria and her dragon flame specialized in rescue operations, combining Maria's medical training with Flame's ability to reach disaster sites that were inaccessible to normal vehicles. Their partnership had already saved dozens of lives during emergencies across the galaxy, proving that dragon-human teams could serve purposes far beyond military applications. As word of the successful partnership spread, Haven began receiving visitors from across human space. Some came seeking to form bonds of their own, while others arrived as diplomats hoping to establish formal relations between their governments and the Dragon Conclave. Lucy found herself serving as translator and mediator, helping two vastly different species learn to understand each other. But not everyone welcomed the return of dragon-human partnerships. The hegemony viewed the bonded pairs as a direct threat to their expansion plans, while certain human governments worried about citizens forming loyalties that transcended national boundaries. Forces on both sides began plotting to destroy Haven and eliminate the partnerships before they could spread further. The first attack came without warning. A hegemony assault fleet emerged from hyperspace and immediately began bombing the planet's surface. They had somehow penetrated the nebula's natural defenses and located Haven's position. Their ships were equipped with weapons specifically designed to disrupt dragon biology and break the telepathic bonds. Lucy and Ember were in the research facility when the attack began. Alarms screamed across the complex as explosions rocked the crystal spires surrounding them. Through their mental connection, Lucy felt Ember's rage at seeing their sanctuary violated, but also his tactical assessment of the situation. The bonded pairs responded to the attack with coordination that amazed even their enemies. Human strategic thinking combined with dragon power and mobility created a defense network unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. David and Storm led aerial strikes against the hegemony fighters, while Maria and Flame evacuated civilians to underground shelters. Lucy and Ember took on the most dangerous task, disabling the hegemony command ship that was coordinating the assault. Using their unparalleled partnership, they infiltrated the massive vessel while it was still in orbit. Lucy's scientific knowledge helping them navigate the ship's systems while Ember's power cleared their path. The battle that followed became legend throughout the galaxy. Dragonfire met advanced technology as bonded pairs fought to protect their home. The hegemony forces had expected to face either primitive dragons or isolated humans. But the combination of both species working together proved overwhelming. When Ember confronted the hegemony admiral in the command ship's bridge, the sight of a fully grown dragon backed by human intelligence and technology broke the enemy's will to fight. The admiral's surrender came just as elder dragons arrived to reinforce Haven's defenses, their massive bioships emerging from hyperspace like living mountains. The victory at Haven marked a turning point in galactic politics. For the first time in centuries, dragons had openly intervened in interstellar conflicts, and their partnership with humans created a new power balance that neither the hegemony nor human governments could ignore. In the aftermath of the battle, Lucy stood on the observation deck of her research facility and watched dozens of dragon-human pairs practicing their coordination in the Valley of First Flight. Each partnership was unique, reflecting the personalities and abilities of both participants, but all were bound together by the same trust and affection that had brought her and Ember together. Ember landed beside her, with the grace that only came from years of perfect coordination. His massive form settled onto the platform with barely a vibration, and Lucy felt his contentment through their bond as he observed their students' progress. "Look how far we've come," Lucy said, running her hand along Ember's warm scales. From a scared little hatchling and a lonely researcher to teachers of a new alliance. Through their mental connection, Ember shared his own amazement at the changes they had witnessed. His memories flowed through their bond, images of that first day when Lucy had tended his wounds, their desperate defense against raiders, their trials before the dragon conclave, and now this moment of triumph as they watched the future taking shape. Representatives from dozens of worlds had come to Haven seeking partnerships with dragons, while the dragon conclave had opened new sanctuaries on other worlds to accommodate the growing interest in bonding. What had begun as an accidental rescue had become the foundation for a new era of cooperation between species. Lucy's research had evolved into something far greater than academic study. She was now documenting the establishment of a new civilization, where humans and dragons worked together as equals. Her protocols for safe bonding had become the standard throughout known space, ensuring that future partnerships would form with proper support and understanding. The changes extended beyond just human and dragon relationships. Other species had observed the success of the bonded pairs and began seeking their own forms of partnership and cooperation. The galaxy was slowly moving away from the territorial conflicts that had dominated politics for centuries, but perhaps the most significant change was in how both humans and dragons viewed themselves and their place in the universe. Humans were learning that true strength came not from domination, but from partnership, while dragons were rediscovering the joy of sharing their ancient wisdom with younger species as the sun set over Haven's crystal spires, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple that reminded Lucy of Ember's beautiful scales. She reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. The scared little hatchling who had refused to leave her side had grown into a protector of worlds, while the lonely scientist who had shown kindness to a wounded creature had become the bridge between two great civilizations. Their love story had become the foundation for a new age, proving that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe was simply choosing to care for someone who needed you. And as Lucy and Ember watched their students practice their first coordinated flights in the fading light, they knew that their bond would endure across the stars, inspiring countless others to find their own partnerships and write their own stories of impossible friendship. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, but the greatest wonder of all was the simple truth that Lucy and Ember had discovered together: that love, trust, and mutual respect could bridge any gap between species, overcome any obstacle, and create miracles that neither could achieve alone. Their story had no ending, only new beginnings, as each successful partnership they taught went forth to create their own legends. And somewhere in the crystal archives of Haven, Lucy's research notes recorded not just scientific data, but the testament to what was possible when two beings chose to become family across the infinite reaches of space.